Hello everyone, this is Caleb Simpson, and you are watching my walkthrough for Chrono Trigger for Nintendo DS. This video covers the Lavos battles, which is the final boss of the regular base game. There is some other bosses that are included for the DS versions and Steam versions of this game that are at the end of the game as well, that are after Lavos and are even harder. However, Lavos is the final boss of the regular base game. So, for the last boss of the game, this video is going to be covering all that stuff. Now, in order to get there, there's a couple different ways to fight Lavos. Now, the primary way is to defeat Zeal at the end of the Black Omen, and ideally you do this in 12,000 BC as opposed to some of the other time periods, 600 and 1000 AD. Because this will get you the best ending if you do it in the earliest time period that it's available. So, if you complete the Black Omen and defeat Zeal in the Black Omen, you will immediately be transported to the first of the Lavos fights. Otherwise, you can also take the bucket at the end of time to skip Zeal and the Black Omen entirely and go straight to Lavos. However, this gets you a different ending, and it is not as good to do it that way. Now, otherwise, though, too, you can also use the Epic to crash into Lavos in the year 1999, although we're already past that, so I'm not sure how that happened. We've already missed the end of the world, guys. Success! But anyways, if you use the Epic to crash into Lavos, what'll happen is you'll skip the first two phases of the Lavos battles, and you'll just skip right ahead to the phase 3 and 4. Which is kind of nice, although the attack mode and outer shell phases are super easy. They're not a problem at all, so I wouldn't worry about it too much. Just go ahead and use either the bucket or go to the Black Omen instead would be my recommendation. Now, as far as these first two phases of Lavos attack mode and outer shell, they're both really easy, so even though we just completed, the 3 Zeal fights in the Black Omen just a little bit ago, I would say the third Zeal fight is quite a bit more difficult than these two phases of Lavos, so don't worry about it too much. We're already here, we're facing Lavos again, so you might be like, oh no, we just did all that and now we have Lavos? Like, don't worry about it. These phases are super easy. First, we have a boss rush mode in which we have to defeat each one of the bosses we've faced thus far. It's just kind of the more iconic ones, and they are all very, very easy. In fact, their stats are very similar to what they were when we fought them the first time, so basically we can just steamroll over all of these, so don't worry about it. There are some specific strategies that would help for this, so I'll walk you through each one of those. Now, first we have the Dragon Tank, which was the boss that we fought during the trial in the Guardia Castle prison. And again, its stats are super low, just like it was at the beginning of the game, so as a result, we're going to destroy this very easily. Now, real quick, I am changing all my accessories on my characters. As a quick reminder, I did talk about this in the previous videos, but I am currently playing with a team that is low level, so I'm in my 40s, which makes all the Lavos battles quite a bit more hard. If you are 50 and above, which I am in my main playthrough, then it makes this really, really easy, and you can just stomp through all this, and Lavos does like no damage to you at all. So what I did is I have 2 playthroughs. One playthrough I was really, really strong, and I did all the character-specific side quests. In this playthrough you're watching right now, I just did the Blackbird and everything, and then I rescued Chrono, so I did all that stuff just so I had him, and that's it. I went straight on to the Black Omen at that point. So my characters are all very low level. I did this on purpose so that you could see some more difficult, where it actually takes strategy because it's harder, and Lavos can actually hurt me as opposed to my high-level characters. So that's what I'm showing right now on screen. So for this first fight with the Dragon Tank, one of the things to know is that the left side, which represents the body, is immune to fire and lightning. So if you use just shadow or water, you can just destroy it instantaneously, super easy. Now otherwise you can just use physical. In fact, its health is so low that probably just some regular attacks with your characters will instantly destroy it. You don't have to worry about it at all. Now next we have the Guardian, which was the boss of Aristome. Now this boss has some counterattacks with the sides, which are pretty rough. However, if you just hit it with some hard-hitting full-screen attacks, they'll die instantaneously. They actually don't have that much health, so it's not really that big a deal. One other thing to know is that the middle part, which is Lavos' core or whatever, which represents the Guardian main body, the core, is immune to fire. So that's one thing to know. So you just want to use something other than fire. Use a really hard-hitting attack. You'll probably just kill him in one shot, and it's easy. So next we have Hecarim. Now, something to know is back when we first faced Hecarim, we only had like level 1, just regular Star Lightning, Star Fire, Star Ice is all we had. Now it's a little bit more complicated because we have a lot more options available to us. But just so you know, a lot of techs in the game, a lot of dual techs are actually like half physical and half magical. For example, Fire Sword, great example. So half of the damage is fire, half the damage is physical, but Hecarim is immune to the physical portion of that dual tech. So you want to use pure magic damage. You can just go ahead and use single techs if you want to, just use Star Lightning, whatever. Otherwise, really good abilities is just use really expensive ones, so like Magus can use Dark Matter, and then Luca and Marl would be your best bet as far as pure magic damage. You can do Antipode Bomb 3. Another really good option would be Inferno, or like Glacier Water, or between Frog and Marl, things like that. So anything that does pure magic damage, you'll win really, really fast. Not a problem. So next we have Zombor, which was the boss of Xenon and Bridge. Remember that it's split up into 2 parts, so the lower half will absorb shadow and water, meanwhile the upper half will absorb light and fire. but it also has a death counter where it will suck up all the MP of one of the characters that hit it, especially if you're using like a dual tech. It'll just prioritize one character or another. It's actually different for every single tech, which character it prioritizes. I think it's, generally speaking, is based off of the MP cost. Whoever has the highest MP cost of that particular dual tech or triple tech, that's the one it will steal the MP from. So in this case, that was Ayla, because that particular ability I just used cost 20 MP for her. But anyways, what I would recommend you do is just use physical for this boss. You can use elemental stuff if you want to, but there's not particularly a reason to do that. So I would just recommend just go ahead and use physical, hit the lower half first, which is what I should have done, and then hit the upper half so that when it does death counter and steal your MP, at least you can restore MP out of combat. It doesn't really matter so much. Like, honestly, we're so fast now. Our speed is so high compared to when we fought Zombor the first time. Like, a lot of our characters had like 8 speed, and now we have 16. It's just so much faster. It doesn't matter. We attack way before he can even attack or do anything. Now, you don't have to use techs for that either. You can just use regular physical attacks, and it's totally fine. Next, we have Masamune, and you can use Chrono's Wind Slash to cancel out the stored wind energy that he's storing up. However, we do so much damage at this point that you probably will never see that. It doesn't matter. So just go ahead and attack him with whatever you want. You'll move through this phase instantaneously. So next we have Nizbel, and remember this is Nizbel 1, not to be confused with Nizbel 2, who looks very similar but has completely different mechanics. Now Nizbel 1 has very high resistances, both to physical and magical, which can be temporarily lowered by using some kind of lightning damage attack. So you can do this with Chrono, with Magus, or with Robo, who all have various lightning abilities. Now, whatever ability you use for that will do no damage at all, but it will then debuff the target and make them vulnerable afterwards. So what you want to do is just use your cheapest lightning attack. Chrono has the cheapest one, Star Lightning, doesn't matter. And then after that, just unleash as much damage as you possibly can. Physical, magical, doesn't matter. Once his defenses are lowered, he'll just get pwned. So just destroy him with whatever you want, whatever suits your fancy. So next we have the most complicated phase, which is Magus. Now this is a little bit less complicated than the last time we fought Magus, but still very similar, and also, just so you know, the best counter for this is Magus himself. So if you want to fight the Magus form, if you have Magus in your party, that's awesome. If you don't worry, stress about it, it's not that big a deal. Otherwise, what you really want is just really hard-hitting magic damage. So pure magic damage, that would be really, really good because you do the most damage. Initially, this form has very high physical resist. What you want to do is go ahead and smack it first at the very beginning just to get it to change its barrier. So now it's lightning is what it just used, which means that's the element we need to use to bypass its barrier. If you use the wrong element, you will actually heal it instead. If you use physical, you just don't do any damage at all. So, by using lightning to respond to its lightning attack, this will change the barrier again. Remember that because it only attacks and changes barriers when you attack, you can stall and heal in between phases if you want. So right now it just used Shadow. I'm going to wait for Magus to go again, and then I will use Dark Matter, which is its hardest hitting Shadow attack. So in general, what you do is you just change the barrier to something you can do. Luca and Marl are really good for this fight because they have access to 3 elements. They have fire, water, and shadow because Antipode Bomb 3 does really high shadow damage. So if you're not sure who to bring, that's a really good choice. I also have Ayla and Luca because they do really hard-hitting fire damage with Inferno, and I was going to do that if it took too long. Now, just so you know, once the boss has taken 3,333 damage, which it already did actually, it will stop changing its barrier. As soon as it stops changing its barrier, then that means that it's finally in the final phase and it's getting ready to cast a spell. When it does this, its defenses are down. You can use any attack at all. Now its physical resistance is lowered, as well as its resistance to all of the other elements, so it will no longer absorb any elemental attacks. So now you can just unleash whatever you want and you'll destroy it really, really fast. So let's say you don't have access to Magus, or you don't have as many elemental options. What I have right now is I have access to water and lightning, but you can also use physical to do damage too. It just doesn't do very much. If you hit him with a really hard-hitting physical, then most of it will be blocked, but some of it will still get through. You only have to do 3,333 damage in order to move on to the second phase, so even if you don't have access to the appropriate element, you can still do damage this way, with physical anyways. Again, remember that if you use the wrong element, then it will actually heal him instead, so that's what you want to avoid. So right now the element changed to lightning. That is something I have access to, so I'm going to go ahead and use Luminaire with Chrono to do more damage. This boss only has 6,666 life, and at the halfway point at 3,333, then his defenses are down and he stops counterattacking. So right now I've done over 3,000 damage, so notice that he did not counterattack that last time, nor did he counterattack right here. You don't actually have to wait, so I use Luminaire again just to be super on the safe side, but you don't actually have to wait for this disclaimer where it says it's preparing to cast a spell or whatever, which means Dark Matter is incoming. You don't have to wait for that at all, because it's already past the halfway point. So as long as the boss doesn't counterattack, if you just watch for that, then you can go ahead and attack with whoever. So I should have been using like drop down between Ayla and Frog at this point already. Anyways, like I was saying, when the defenses go down like that, that means the boss is vulnerable to everything. Physical, magical, everything's good to go. It doesn't matter. All the resistances are gone. So just unleash as much damage as you possibly can with whatever you want. Super easy. So anyway, that was probably the most complicated part of this entire thing. This entire phase is going to be the Magus part. So I just decided I would show that multiple times so you could see. And like, that wasn't necessarily an ideal team composition for that last part because it was all about physical damage, and yet that was like particularly a magic battle, you know what I mean? But it doesn't matter, like, it was super easy mode as you saw. So next we're moving on to Azala / Black Tyranno. This is pretty easy. It's sort of weird. Azala is more vulnerable to magical, but Black Tyranno is more vulnerable to physical. Ideally, you kind of go physical, but if you want to go magical, you can, which is what I'm going to show right here. So what we're doing is we're going to kill Azala first. We just need to use something really hard hitting magic damage so that'll destroy the left bit / pod, and it's super easy. Doesn't matter. Like, all of our magic damage at this point, if you use something really hard hitting, you'll destroy it and it's just over. Now Azala will use sap on death, which will apply HP down, and this will make you slowly poison for a little while, so you'll take some extra damage. Now in the meantime, you can just attack Lavos if you want to. However, you don't do much damage. Instead, it's probably better just to wait, or you can just use regular attacks for the meantime. But you want to wait until Black Tyranno Lavos will begin storing power. At this point, go ahead and unleash as much damage as you possibly can, just all your hardest hitting stuff, whatever you want to do. Magic damage, physical damage, doesn't matter. It is slightly more vulnerable to physical though, just so you know. However, at this point, our characters are just so overpowered that everything will get destroyed super easily, so it's just not a problem whatsoever. Just unleash a whole bunch of damage. Eventually, this will unleash a fire attack. At this point, we probably have enough magic defense where it really just isn't going to hurt at all, so you don't have to worry about it. If you're really worried about it though, too, you can initiate this particular phase. You can start it out by wearing some red plate, so that would heal you instead. And it's something you could potentially do, but totally unnecessary. At this point, we're so strong that you probably won't even feel it. It'll tickle a little bit, just a little bit. By the way, I haven't really used this triple tech much, but it's pretty good. A Gatling kick between these three characters is actually pretty nice. It's just, I don't use this team composition very much because they don't have a lot of healing. It's just kind of like all damage. But yeah, Gatling kick is awesome though. It does pretty decent damage, and it does do shadow specifically. It's single target only, but it hits pretty hard. There's other triple techs that are better overall, like 3D attack I was just using does like, I don't know, another 30% more damage. It's just better. So next we're moving on to Giga Gaia. Now this is the last part of this entire Lavos phase, and in order to do this, what you want to do is destroy the sides as soon as possible. You just use really hard-hitting magic damage that hits the whole screen would be the best. Just destroy them with whatever you got. Now in my particular case, I'm using Inferno / Fire Whirl. It's not to be confused with Luca and Chrono's Fire Whirl. This is Luca and Ayla's Fire Whirl, yeah, which they renamed it to Inferno in the Steam and DS versions of the game. But this will do a significant damage. It's based off of Ayla's magic stat. I've talked about this in previous videos, but if you pump a bunch of magic into Ayla, it increases her healing greatly, as well as the damage of this ability. This is a pure magic ability that hits really hard. That's why I've been using it for all of this, but it'll just destroy both of the left and right hands of Giga Gaia like crazy. They only have like 2,000 life, I think it is, off the top of my head, so it's nothing. So I did 3,000 there to the whole screen. It's just great. You know, basically all of these phases are not really much of a problem. I feel like the only ones that are super awkward is going to be like Nizbel if you didn't bring anybody that has lightning damage, or Hecarim if you just don't have a lot of magic damage on you, because like doing it all with laser spin if you didn't level up Robo very much, for example, would just be really awkward. You could do Hecarim, it'd just be kind of annoying, but like little things like that, if you just don't have a lot of magic damage, you know, the Magus battle too, I guess if you're just having all physical damage dealers, I guess that'd be like Robo, Frog, and then like Ayla, I guess, would be awkward because then you're just relying only on physical. But even that, it's still a pretty good team. You have a lot of healing and stuff. I don't know. I feel like that whole Lavos phase is not bad. So once you have finally completed all 9 of those phases, we're finally moving on to the next phase of Lavos, which is Outer Shell. Now this one has some pretty nasty physical attacks. This is actually a like toned down version of the one that we fought in the Ocean Palace that just one-shot us instantaneously. Unless you're playing in New Game Plus, then you would have been able to survive that. This battle is very similar to that, and it's just all the damage is significantly less. The first thing to know about this boss is it has a nasty chaos debuff, so in order to counteract that, you just want to wear something that gives you status immunity. So prismatic helms or Angel's Tiara ideally, otherwise the next best thing would be Vigilant Hats. After that would be the Nova armor for the guys, and then also the Shala's Amulet. So those would be things that you could have gotten on the Black Omen. The Angel's Tiara and the Prismatic Helms are a little bit more awkward, although as a comment, during the last Zeal phase, I was saying that you could charm the hands to get a Prismatic Helm, and that would be very useful for this fight as an example. It's just a really good helmet, super good, and that would give you status immunity so that you wouldn't die here. As soon as this battle starts, the boss will then use Destruction Rains from the Heavens, which causes Lavos needles to hit our entire party, and it hurts pretty bad, and you would just want to use some kind of full party heal. Like, Slurp Kiss is like the best thing ever if you give enough magic to Ayla. But otherwise, you can use some Lapis or even a Mega Elixir if you're feeling kind of desperate or whatever. But just any kind of full party heal will help you survive that. It doesn't actually hurt too bad, and physical defense is the biggest thing that will help you for this fight. So Guardian Helms would help a lot. Something else you can do, by the way, as long as you heal up really, really well after Destruction Rains from the Heavens, then you're pretty much golden for the rest of the fight. But something you can do to reduce the incoming damage after that is to use some shield spheres on all of your characters. This will reduce incoming physical damage by 1/3, same way that a Guardian/Safe Helm does as well. But that's one way you can make this a little bit easier. Now, for this particular fight, that doesn't really matter. The reason I'm pointing it out is because if you go back to, like, New Game Plus and you go back to the Ocean Palace, then when you confront Lavos that time, you one-shot us last time we were there, because it's a much more ramped-up version. I think it has, like, 3,200 or 32,000 HP, for example, something like that. It has crazy numbers for everything, and Destruction Rains from the Heavens hits for more like 900 or something like that. You can barely survive it. So if you do fight the ramped-up version of Lavos that was in Ocean Palace in New Game Plus, then that's the way you can survive that. Use Slurp Kiss to heal your whole party, and then follow up with some shield spheres to reduce the incoming physical damage you take for the rest of the fight. So in that way, you can survive that version of Lavos. It's really tough, but basically all the other strategies are the same. Wear status immunity, not a big deal. So yeah, this particular phase is more based off how strong your characters are, and ideally physical defense is what you need. Like, physical defense and status immunity is what you need for that particular phase of Lavos. So the outer shell is not hard at all. So I guess ideally it leans a little bit more towards like Chrono, Ayla, Frog, and Robo as opposed to Luca and Marl, but and Magus as well. Magus actually isn't too bad. His physical defense isn't the greatest, but he's not as bad as like Luca, I suppose, as far as physical defense. Anyways, once you have completed all that, you can enter the shell at long last, and if you entered from the Black Omen side, then there'll be a portal in the bottom left that takes you back to the end of time. So you can totally go back and do other things. You can stock up on items or consumables, whatever you want to do, and there is no detriment to doing it this way. However, in order to go back to that cave, what you have to do is either go back to the Black Omen again and fight Zeal once more, or you have to use the bucket, and that would be the best way to get there. Now at this point though too, you can also use the epic to get there as well. However, that is bad because it breaks the epic and you get a less good ending. So just so you know, that's one other nuance about that. But either way, regardless of if you went back to the end of time or not, I would recommend you save at the Sparkly either here at the end of time or inside the cave right before the final Lavos battles. So this is how you can do this. I'm going to show the bucket route real quick. This shows a little bit of a cinematic where we travel to 1999 AD, and then we'll see Lavos coming out of the ground, which is kind of weird because you see him there and it's like, and then we get up to him and it's like, oh, the shell's already defeated, if you already did it. But basically, otherwise, it's the exact same. Like, it shows it next to the ground, but then the background turns all swirly, just like it was a second ago that you saw earlier in the video. So nothing's really changed. So what you're watching on screen is just some recordings of me showing the bucket route of me going back to that cave, and then so you'll see that Lavos is already defeated. If he's not already defeated, you'll just see the swirly background, and it starts Lavos attack mode and outer shell again, is how it would play out instead. And then otherwise, I'm also going to show the cinematic of the epic crashing into it. I'm not going to actually do those. I actually did the the Black Omen route is what I actually did for this, which is to get the better ending. But anyways, I'm just showing those cinematics. So while that's all playing and you can enjoy that in the background, just for your own curiosity, so you can see what happens there. In the meantime, I'm going to talk about what the requirements are for the next two phases of Lavos. So, attack mode and outer shell are kind of a joke. They're really easy. In fact, I think they're easier than Zeal. So when you complete the Zeal phases, it's those are fairly difficult. Then you move into attack mode and outer shell, and they're just super easy. They're a cakewalk. So you do those, not a problem, and then you can go ahead and save afterwards like I showed in the recordings. Now, after that, you move on to Lavos and Lavos Core, which is inside the outer shell. Now, that is significantly harder, so you do need to make sure you're prepared for that. Ideally, you're like in the 50s, maybe more even like the 55 range was kind of where you want to be. But as far as I'm concerned, according to my tests anyways, the biggest thing that matters is, you know how like Outer Shell, for example, used that Destruction Rains from the Heavens and it had all those needle spin things that attacked our whole party, and then you just need to make sure you have enough defenses to survive it? Well, very similarly, the Lavos phase, so the third phase of Lavos, just called plain Lavos, that phase does magic damage for its attack that it uses as soon as you enter. As soon as you enter that battle, it uses this attack that hits your whole party. It hurts really, really bad. In order to survive, you need to have at least 80 magic defense, is what I have found. So as long as you have more than that, As long as you can survive that first volley, you're good to go, and then you can do both of those next phases, and you can finish the game. So that's kind of the threshold. That's the determining factor of whether or not you can take Lavos or not. So you just need 80 magic defense. Now, if your characters are in the 40s still, you probably don't have enough magic defense, but you can circumvent this with item choice. So there's various items you can wear. For example, the Zodiac Cape with the girls will give you 10 plus to magic defense. Same thing with like some of the accessories, like you have the Flea's Bustier will do that, as well as like the Barrier/Wall Ring. But you also are going to want to have status immunity too. Very important. These last two phases have tons and tons of status effects. So you need to make sure you have that taken care of as well. And then also like, like Luca has the Tabin's Helm, for example, that gives 10 plus to magic defense. That's a really low like physical defense though, so it's kind of rough because you do that, you're sacrificing some physical defense, and her physical defense is already kind of low, so I don't really think that's ideal. But anyways, if you can have at least 80 magic defense, as long as you can survive the first volley, then you can go ahead and use Shield Spheres and Barrier Spheres, which if you're fighting Lavos early, so you're very low level, that would be the best way to survive it and not die. And again, like one of the biggest things that determines whether or not you can take the Black Omen as well as Lavos himself too, like the biggest things that determine whether you can do that is your equipment, which you get from the character-specific side quests that I showed earlier on in this walkthrough. So if you do those things, you'll be high enough level where you have enough magic defense and you have good equipment, and you have status immunity and everything's great. You do awesome. So it's your equipment is like the biggest thing that'll help you. But what I'm also trying to show with these videos is how to do it with low-level characters, because that's really hard. If you don't have good equipment and you don't have high enough level and you don't have enough magic defense, can you even do it? And I'm going to show you how. So I'm going to show both. So right now I'm going to spend some time talking about equipment. Now, what you're seeing on screen is the last little bit of the epic route if you're going to take that and crash into the outer core. You can skip attack mode and outer shell entirely, and that would be how you can get here instead. In general, though, I do think that the Black Omen route is smarter, and you end up with that portal there, so instead you can warp back to the end of time whenever you want, and just take the bucket to get back here. And there's a sparkly here where you can use shelters and save and stuff as well. Alright, let's talk equipment. So first I'll go through talking about endgame equipment. If you did all the character-specific side quests, I'll show both. So for endgame stuff, the ideal stuff in all scenarios, by the time you're ready for Lavos, would be Angel's Tiara. You can get that from the Arena of Ages. Super awesome. You can also get prismatic dresses there, as well as charm them off of Queen Zeal, or get them from the mysterious chest or whatever, sealed chest. You can get it from there as well. Otherwise, an alternative for that, if you don't have Angel's Tiara, which most of you probably don't, then Vigilant Hats would probably be the best for all these girls, because that would give you status immunity. But yeah, prismatic dresses are amazing. Get them on as many characters as you can. You could have gotten one from the sealed chest, and also you can get one from Zeal, would be another alternative. Otherwise, you can get some like the Reptite dress or the Zodiac Cape would be really good, because that gives you some 10 to magic defense, which again is like what you need as far as a bare minimum to get there. If you're high enough level, you should be capped on magic defense anyways. An alternative for accessories, if you don't want to use the gold stud, would be Prism Spectacles. Really good because you can greatly increase your damage. It kind of depends on which dual text you're planning on using though, but you can make your characters hit way harder. Again, for Ayla, I would say the Prismatic Dress is definitely the best for her. Otherwise, again, the Zodiac Cape would be really good because it gives her some of that much-needed magic defense. Like, notice that she only has 89 on screen right now. Even though she's level 59, she like barely has enough magic defense to even survive Lavos' first attack. So anyways, moving on. So for Magus, you can use the Judgment Scythe. I don't think that you can apply stop to the enemies, though, so Doom Scythe is probably better, even though you're not really going to get the benefit of your downed allies, ideally. Gloom Helm is probably the best headpiece for him in general. Otherwise, Vigilant Hat is okay. You get the Gloom Helm from Magus' side quest in a hidden chamber on the bottom right, right before you fight Ozzy. The Gloom Cape is pretty good. There's not really super anything else in that slot you could do, although you could do like the Nova Armor to give him status immunity. It's not actually that much less defense, so that's a potential option. Moonbeam Armor is pretty good too because it increases your magic defense, although you don't necessarily need that for Magus specifically. For Chrono, ideally you have the Rainbow, and because that would give you the most damage, and I do think it's pretty neat in combination with the Wrath Band, although that is not necessary. Prismatic Helm would definitely be best on Chrono. If you don't have that, Vigilant Hats. As far as armor, I'm just using something that has the most armor value. Otherwise, Nova Armor isn't really that much less, but it will give you status immunity, so you could put it there instead. And that way you could have options like the Haste Helm, for example, for Chrono, which would be really nice. Chrono's just really fast in general, but making him really fast so he can res people all the time is really good. Otherwise, you can also do something like decreasing damage he takes from like Shadow or Lightning, for example, would be pretty good. The Wrath Band is kind of optional. You can put it on any of these characters if you really want to. Similarly, the Champion's Badge on Frog is really nice. You get that from completing the Lost Sanctum as a potential option. Masamune is definitely the best. Otherwise, you can also use the Rune Blade to increase his healing. Again, for armor, I just have something in here that has the highest armor value. I'm already maxed out on other stats. Doesn't really matter. For Robo, I definitely think that the Moonbeam armor is the best in slot for his armor, at least until his magic defense is capped anyways. But otherwise, the Crisis arm is potentially an option. Just make sure you have to heal him all the time to make it worthwhile. Otherwise, the Dragon arm, otherwise the Terraton arm would be the next best bet. Now, for Robo, you can also use the Nova armor. This will reduce his magic defense, though, which is kind of sad. So that kind of wraps up all the, like, endgame best in slot stuff. I mean, other than the Dimensional Vortex stuff, of course, but that's, like, after Lavos, so this is all the stuff you can do before that, including all of the Lost Sanctum stuff as well. So anyways, now I'm switching back to my other playthrough so I can show you the best equipment you can use if you are low level and you don't have a lot of options. So if you want to attack Lavos earlier, which is a big no-no, by the way, here would be how you can do that. So if you're level, like, 45, we have very low magic defense, so I need to get over that hump. If I have at least 80, I can survive. So I'm putting barrier/wall rings on Frog and Chrono to give them at least 80, and then meanwhile for Ayla, she's kind of low as well, and I can do that with her chest piece. So I can do that with either the Zodiac Cape or otherwise the Prismatic Dress. Even though the Prismatic Dress doesn't give her magic defense, it drops magic damage by 1/3, so that would help a lot. Now we can also accomplish the same thing with whatever it's called, with Barrier Spheres as well, though, so that's what I'm going to be doing instead. So I think probably the Zodiac Cape would overall be less damage taken total. Now for the guys, because they have status immunity with their chest piece, I can decide what kind of thing I want in their headpiece, so I can do like Guardian Helms. I think Haste Helms are overall the most important, but you can also do like a Dark Helm, for example, to reduce shadow damage taken. You can do stuff like that. So there's a couple different options for you. Meanwhile, for Ayla, I'm using Shala's Amulet or the Vigilant Hat for that slot. Also, by the way, if you did charm the Prismatic Helm as well from Zeal 2, that would be another option that you could use that would also give you status immunity too. This is, in my opinion, the hardest boss battle in the game, and it is fairly tricky, and there's a couple things you need to know in order to survive. As I just covered, you need to have status immunity, and you also need to have enough magic defense. Now, the most damaging attack it has is definitely going to be Laser Beams, which is a pure magic ability. It's not elemental, so no, like, plates will block it or anything. You have to use just enough magic defense to survive it. And then what you're going to want to do is heal immediately, because if he follows up with another attack, it will kill you. This attack comes from the head/body, but it does require the arms to still be alive. Now to heal up my whole party, you can either use a Mega Elixir, would be the easiest thing. What I'm doing is Slurp Kiss, which will heal the whole party. As long as Ayla has 35 magic, it will heal your party completely, which is really great. So tossing a whole bunch of magic on her with magic capsules/tabs is really powerful. So I think one of the biggest things that will help you survive this boss battle, make it quite a bit easier, is to use Barrier Spheres and Shield Spheres. You can get a bunch of these just by enemies drop them when defeated in the Black Omen. Otherwise you can charm them earlier, especially on Mount Woe would be the easiest place to get them. But you get a whole bunch of these. As you see, I have tons because I got a whole bunch of them in the Black Omen. So anyways, you can go ahead and use both. These effects stack. So I have a whole bunch of Shield Spheres and Barrier Spheres, so use two of them, use one of each on each character. This will significantly reduce all the damage of physical and magical by 1/3. Now, as a quick comment, you can wear the Prismatic Dress, which defaultly gives you the barrier buff, which is super awesome and blocks 1/3 of damage. However, you can accomplish the same thing with item choice. So by having the Barrier Sphere apply that buff instead, and having Ayla wear the Zodiac Cape instead, that gives her more magic defense, and I think that's overall more important. So even though the Prismatic Dress is like best in slot for all the girls, I think in this particular case it's actually better to use the Zodiac Cape, assuming that you're not maxed out on, if you're capped on magic defense, then of course, then the Prismatic Dress would be better. One of the reasons for that actually is because it has a whole bunch more armor, so it blocks more physical damage just in general. But anyways, yes, I think overall the Zodiac Cape is a better item if you're lower level. Alright, so this boss has an attack that just really messes you up, and it looks like online most people don't understand what that attack is or how it even works. I'm going to explain it to you. So he has this ability called Curse, otherwise called Seal in older versions of the game, and what it does is it will remove all the status immunity you have on a particular character. Now, just so you know, for this particular boss, it only activates when there's only one arm remaining. So what you want to do is you want to take out both of the arms at the same time. Now, the funky thing about that is the arms have different amounts of health. So the one on the right side of your screen, which is labeled as left arm, because it's Lavos' left arm from his perspective, so, or his, her, whatever, its perspective. So the arm on the right side of your screen has 12,000 HP, meanwhile the one on the left side of your screen has 8,000 HP. So what you want to do is you want to whittle down the one on the right, and then get them like kind of even, and then just kind of evenly kill them. What I'm doing in this particular recording is I am using 3D attack, which does pretty good single target damage, and so I'm attacking each side, so I'm alternating back and forth, but I'm kind of just counting in my head, just trying to make sure that I'm keeping track of roughly how much damage they've taken, and then I'm going to finish them off with Luminaire. Now, as a result, this means that both of the arms will die at the same time, is the plan. That did not quite work out in my favor, actually. I kind of messed it up and miscounted. But anyways, I'm going to go ahead and smack the right one or well, left arm, the right side of the screen, smack it a little bit more. And my goal is to do this before it casts Curse/Seal, because if it does that, then it really messes me up for the rest of the entire battle. This boss has a lot of nasty status effects. It can apply Chaos and Poison, and I think a couple other things, but as long as I have status immunity, I don't have to worry about it. And it can put you to sleep too, I think. Now, once both of the arms are defeated, its attacks change quite a bit. I think overall these generally do less damage, and one of the most important ones is Exploding Crystals, whatever it's called, and it will do a bunch of fire damage. Now, you can block this using Red Plate, but I don't think that's super important. So overall, I just think it's not really that hard of a boss. That's the biggest thing, is just having enough stats to survive, and then knowing how to not take status immunity damage, or yeah, having status effects happen. Dark Will, for example, that it's using right now, that's a pretty nasty ability that I think applies Chaos as well to the whole party, and so it's pretty rough. If you're constantly having people get status effects on them, then it can be pretty awful. And just so you know, too, one of the cool things about Slurp Kiss is it does remove status effects. So if you get poison applied to you or whatever, you can go ahead and use Slurp Kiss, and not only will that heal your party completely, assuming that Ayla has 35 magic or more, but it will also guarantee that you remove any status effects. So if you have status immunity on Frog and Ayla, but then whoever your third is doesn't have status immunity, you can kind of just deal with it because you can neutralize it right away. Now, that is still annoying because this boss is applying status effects all the time, but it is definitely doable. Other than that, there's not really anything special to know about this boss. You just attack it with whatever. I will say, because you want to take out the arms relatively evenly, you can either use some single target on each or whatever, but you want to just do enough single target to the one on the right so that both the arms die at the same time. But otherwise, probably just use full screen attacks would be best, just generally speaking, because there's no counterattacks or anything, so if you use Antipode Bomb 3 or something like that, just blow up everything. You could use Antipode Bomb 2, for example, at the beginning to whittle down the arm on the right, and then use Antipode Bomb 3 to hit the whole screen, for example. That's something you could do with Luca and Marl, and then have your third slot be a healer, like Robo, for example, that's using Heal Beam to heal the entire party. As long as you give him enough magic, he can actually solo heal everybody really, really well, actually. Heal Beam eventually becomes really, really disgustingly good. I think it becomes amazingly good at 70 magic, though, which is a lot. So you're probably unlikely that you have that much unless you're in New Game Plus. But anyways, eventually Robo can heal everybody all the time, and he's an amazing healer. Super fast, super strong, he doesn't take any damage from anything, it's great. So yeah, this boss, it doesn't really matter what team you bring. The main things you're looking for is full party heal and enough stats that you can survive, and that's pretty much it. You want just a little bit of single target to whittle down the arm on the right side of the screen, but other than that, nothing else really matters. You can use anything for this boss. So it's really not that scary. That's just the biggest point of entry to understand. If you're 55 or somewhere in that range, this boss will probably be really easy. Even with just one character, it is possible to just beat him up with just that. It's a little bit awkward, and it takes a little while, but you can totally do it. Now, after you've defeated that form of Lavos, we're now moving on to Lavos Core, which is the final boss of the regular base game. There are some more bosses that are included in the special edition versions of the game, and I'll be showing those later on in future videos. But for right now, this is the end boss for the Super Nintendo version. So the first thing to know about the Lavos Core battle is the fact that he has that same Curse/Seal ability that will remove any status immunity that you have. And that's the thing that'll really mess you up. He has a lot of attacks that apply status effects, and it's kind of impossible to keep them off of you because he reapplies something over and over and over again. It's just awful. So the biggest tip I can give you is destroy the bit/pod that's on the left, because that is the one that will apply the Curse/Seal. So as long as you can destroy it, then you're good to go, and you don't have to worry about all the status effects, and that's the biggest tip I can give you about this boss. Now, this bit/pod over here on the left will absorb all elemental damage and will heal it instead, all of it. So you cannot use any kind of magic on it because it will not work. You have to use physical to kill it. And it doesn't have that much health, it only has 2,000 HP, which is nothing. So what you want to do is just ideally, if you have some characters that have some physical techs on you, then do that. If you have a pure physical dual tech in particular, Falcon Strike would be cool because you can hit all three at the same time, for example. If you have, or Aerial Strike, or Triple Kick, or Frenzy/Confuse, Rapid Fire Fist, Drop Down is great, 3D Attack is great, all those kinds of things. So this party that I have right now is really good for this battle, as far as destroying that anyways. I can kill it instantly, guaranteed. Again, just like the last fight, if you are here early especially, then I highly recommend you use some Barrier Spheres and Shield Spheres. So use both of them on each character. This will reduce all incoming damage by 1/3 for both physical and magical, and then you'll just be really good to go at that point. Now, as far as how to attack the boss, now, you might think at first glance that the middle guy is actually Lavos. That is actually false. That is a decoy that is just there to deal some damage. And then meanwhile, the bit/pod that's on the right is the actual Lavos Core. So we need to kill the little guy over there in order to defeat Lavos, and that has 30,000 HP, which is a ton. The body, meanwhile, can be destroyed. However, it will revive after just a little bit. So the deal is, once you kill one of the other parts of Lavos, then the bit/core on the right will then lower its defenses, and you can finally do some good damage to it, and then just start whittling away at it. So you can destroy the middle one if you want to. What that accomplishes is that it means that you don't have to deal with the temporal attacks. So the bit/pod on the right will occasionally change the time period, and what this does is it will determine what ultimate ability the body in the middle uses. Now, whenever it revives its partners, you want to quickly destroy the left bit first of all. That's your highest priority. Always destroy that. And then you can go ahead and focus on the body if you want. As far as the ultimate attacks go, most of them are not that big a deal. I think Grand Dream, I think is what it's called, or Grand Stone. I think Grand Stone is the worst one. What it does is it does really high, I think it's physical damage to one character, and it pretty much kills them. If you're lower level, you're pretty much guaranteed to die. So it's pretty awful. So anyways, if you are worried about that, then take out the body. The problem is, like, what happens is as soon as you destroy the left bit, then the one on the right starts trying to resurrect, and it takes so many turns. By the time you kill the body, it's like you only have 1 turn or maybe 2 to do damage to the actual core, and it's just kind of awkward. So it's better to, like, if you have enough healing to survive, I think it's better to just focus on the core itself and just take it out, because if you can get rid of it as soon as possible, then you don't have to worry about anything. It's great. And just to clarify a little further too, I didn't really have time to talk about this before, but the core that's on the right has really high defenses, but those defenses are lowered when it's trying to resurrect. Now just pay attention to the text that's at the top of the screen, because what'll happen is it'll keep alternating back and forth between having its defenses down and having its defenses up. So notice right now it shows on screen that the defenses are restored, so even though it's still in the process of resurrecting, then in a moment it'll switch back to being lowered again. So once it's lowered again, I can go ahead and continue attacking it. So just keep note of that when you want to not attack the core when the defenses are up, otherwise you're going to waste all of your MP on that. But yeah, other than that, there's not really too much to know. Like, I mean, ideally you'd have some really hard-hitting magic damage that hits the whole screen, like Antipode Bomb 3 or Dark Matter, something like that would be pretty cool. Those would be nice, but it's not required at all. Or like Luminaire, actually. If you can give enough magic to Chrono, Luminaire becomes amazing, actually. But I think Luca would be a better choice overall, just because she does really solid damage, and she has some really good dual techs that also do magic damage. So that'd be super nice. But you'd have to have enough physical that you can kill the pod on the left for this core battle. So once you're on Lavos core, you want to destroy that bit on the left as soon as possible. It's super, super important. So other than that, honestly, your team composition doesn't really matter. I feel like the equipment choice is more important overall. Like, for example, I briefly mentioned this a little bit ago, but like the prismatic dress, even though I do think it is best in slot in generally speaking, you can accomplish the same thing with the barrier sphere to get the barrier buff. You don't have to use the prismatic dress just to get that particular buff anyways. And same thing is true with the guardian/safe helm. It's not really the best for this battle because you can do the same thing with the shield sphere. At that point, the only other benefit you're getting out of the guardian/safe helm is just the fact that it has high physical defense, so it blocks your physical damage a little bit more, but it's kind of like, does that really matter at that point? So I think it's way better for that slot to use like a haste helm, for example. Way better, because if you're going twice as fast and you can just use a shield sphere at the beginning of combat, then like by the time that your next turn comes around, it's like the exact same point that you would have had your first turn if you were wearing the guardian helm. You know what I mean? It's just better. So if you don't have Marl in your party, I think that the haste helm plus shield spheres and barrier spheres is way better. And same thing with the armor piece. That's why I'd use the Zodiac Cape on Ayla, was to give her more total magic defense, because magic defense plus barrier sphere is higher defense than the prismatic dress would be instead. The prismatic dress has higher defense, so that's one thing about that. You'll notice on screen too, I've been rezzing my characters and then using Mega Elixir. Don't feel like you're locked into just using your healers. Even though Slurp Kiss is amazing, I don't have to use that. I tend to shy away from using consumables in general. Part of that is just because I'm a cheap skater. Like, I'm very frugal. I want to save my money. It's too expensive. I don't want to do it. These items are so rare, but I have a ton of them. After farming so many Mega Elixirs, I don't want to use them. But anyways, part of the reason I bring that up is just to explain that, like, even though I have a heal that's totally capable of it, Slurp Kiss is awesome and everything like that, but don't forget that you at least have the tool of being able to use some of your consumables. And, like, I try not to rely on them completely, but also still use them at the appropriate times, because if you have this tool in your tool belt, it's very useful at the appropriate times. So yeah, that's basically the fight, and as a reminder, I am using low-level characters. These guys are, I think, between 45 and 47, so they're a little bit lower. If you were like 50 and above, it makes it quite a bit easier. And it's like, seriously, when you have maxed out magic defense and you have a little bit more stamina/vigor and better items, then it just makes this fight quite a bit easier, because some of his attacks are only doing like 20 damage or like 100 or 200 damage. I think like his punch ability at most does like 500, if that. So he just gets mowed over pretty good. Also the fact that like all of your spells, instead of doing like 1,000 damage, you're doing like 2,000 or more. You just hit so much harder that it just makes him way easier. But yeah, that's how you defeat the final boss of the base game, and I am using lower level characters. Like for example, I think Frog is currently using a Rune Blade, which is kind of like a mid-tier weapon. I just threw it on him so he had increased healing for some of his abilities. It doesn't really matter too much. Like Slurpkiss is totally based off of Ayla's magic actually. But anyways, just point being that like my characters are using low level equipment. He's not even using the Masamune, but I just wanted to show this battle using low level characters so you can see that it's not only possible, but totally doable. So that is the end of the base game. However, if you're playing in the DS, Steam, or mobile versions, there is additional content in the Lost Sanctum and Dimensional Vortex, which I'm going to be showing in the next few videos. Immediately following this, we're going to have the credits for the main ending, which is the good ending, and that's for completing Lavos by going through the Black Omens. That's what I'm going to show you in the next video. Otherwise, stay tuned for the videos after that, where I'll show additional content that is just in special edition versions of the game. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. If you found this helpful, be sure to throw a like on it, subscribe, and stay tuned for more content just like this. As always, stay awesome, have an amazing day, and I'll see you next time.